Good morning, everybody. It is so wonderful to see you all. You know, when Meg and I and the board decided on me coming to speak, it was months and months and months ago, and we had no idea that it wouldn't be in person. But the good thing is that we have all of this great technology, so we can still come together in sacred spiritual community across the miles. So the title of my talk is That's My Story, and I'm Willing to Give It Up. Now, we all have a story, that collection of experiences we've had in our lives. Some of them are positive, and some leave a lot to be desired. But what we often do is latch onto the challenging ones, making them the central narrative through which we filter current and future events. So I have two stories from my life to share with you. When I was a little girl, about 6 months old, I had big brown eyes and slicked down jet black hair, and I was smiling all of the time. And it just seemed like I was just so excited to be here. My mother used to tell me stories about taking me out in the stroller and double strapping me in because she was afraid I was going to fall out because I was always jumping up and down and waving and trying to say hi to everybody. And when I look back at pictures of myself at that time, it seemed like there was this vibrant light that oozed from every pore of my body. And I'm sure I thought that every day, no matter what it was exciting and new. I was fed and I was clothed and I was bathed and I was held and people oohed and awed all over me. Life was simply wonderful. But as I started growing up, things started to change. The external messages I was getting from those around me weren't quite as rosy, and just being myself became a challenge. Suddenly, other people had a lot to say. Now, whether you're a boy or a girl or however you identify yourself, some of these might sound familiar to you. You're not smart enough, or you're too smart for your own good. Your race or your sexual orientation is wrong. You're not Black, Hispanic, gay, straight, whatever, enough. You're too tall or you're too short. You're too fat or you're too thin. You're too young or you're too old. You don't make enough money or you make too much money. You really should drive this car. You should wear these clothes. You don't belong in this neighborhood. Or maybe you've forgotten where you came from if you live in a certain place or a certain manner. And this list goes on and on and on. And these supposed guidelines for living can be heavy burdens to bear. So the second story I have for you is, on the warm weather days, I like to ride my bike to the gym. It was about 2 miles from my house. I could leave my car at home. It's a great way to get exercise. And just out of habit, I always go the same way. But I had been thinking for a while about changing it up a bit just to see some new scenery. So on Tuesday, July 18th, 2017, I left my house. I rode up to the first corner, and that's where I always turn right. And when I got to the corner, I thought, you know what? Let's make today the day. Let's go straight. So I crossed the street. I was riding downhill, not particularly fast, totally aware of my surroundings. And up ahead, I saw what looked like rocks and gravel strewn across the sidewalk. And I realized later that in my attempts to avoid the rocks and gravel, I overcorrected by squeezing both brakes. The bike screeched to a halt. The back wheel reared up. And all I heard myself say was, and then everything went white. When the whiteness disappeared and life came back into focus, I found myself on the ground on all fours with most of my weight on my left arm. And due to the intense pain, it took about 10 seconds for me to realize that I had probably broken my left arm. To this day, I don't remember anything that happened in between the white. The only evidence I have that I had obviously gone over the handlebars and rolled is that my bike and my backpack were up on the sidewalk in front of me. I had road rash all over my body, and when I looked back on my helmet later, I could see scratches where my head had obviously hit the ground. Fortunately, I was able to reach my backpack with my right arm, pull out my cell phone, and call a friend of mine who lived about 2 blocks away to come and help me. So after I hung up from her while I'm laying on the ground in intense pain, the first thought that came to my mind was, Lysa, say your gratitude list. So I just started talking out loud, everything that I could think of. I'm on the sidewalk and not in the street. It's daytime and not nighttime. It's a sunny day and not raining. I'm only 2 miles from the hospital. I have health insurance. My friend who's coming to get me, she'll know exactly what to do. And the biggest thing on that gratitude list for me was, God is here. A man jogging by, my friend that I had called, and some people driving down the street who saw me on the ground all arrived right around the same time and called 911. So after the police came and the paramedics came, I was put on the stretcher and put in the ambulance for the ride to the hospital. And while we were on the way, once again, that gratitude list came to mind. So I asked the very cute, I might add, EMTs. I hadn't hit my head so hard that I missed that, if they would say my gratitude list with me. And one of them said, well, what's a gratitude list? And I said, it's all the things I have to be grateful for, even while this is happening to me right now. So they jumped right in and said it with me. Once I got to the hospital, into the emergency room, I got the distressing news that I had actually broken my left elbow. And I will spare you the gory details on what fortunately was going on out here that I couldn't really see. But I had to have surgery and right away. So as you might imagine, once I got home, all drugged up, my arm wrapped from my shoulder to my wrist, many of the abilities that I had, and I now realize I took for granted, were suddenly taken away, even if only temporarily. Cooking, driving, brushing my hair, opening the toothpaste, tying my shoes, changing my clothes, everything was a challenge. Being grateful for what I could do had gotten totally lost in the shuffle. In the early days of my recovery, I realized what I was really suffering from was an overwhelming feeling of worthlessness. And what I was telling myself about those breaks in my arm was, see, you can't do anything right. Why did you have to go a different way to the gym? The other way was working just fine. You always make bad decisions. These problems you're having, they're all your fault. You're no good to anybody like this. Once again, I was tying my old childhood stories to what people said about me when I was little. Like I said, we all have a story, that collection of experiences we've had in our lives. But in latching onto the challenging ones, we allow our inner critic to sit on our shoulder and whisper them to us over and over and over. In the book, Radical Forgiveness by Colin Tipping, he talks about something that he calls a forgiveness centrifuge. And he says it's kind of like if you have a juicer where you put something in, spin it around, and separate the parts. And the forgiveness centrifuge, he says, we can use to separate the facts of what happened in our lives from our interpretation of the facts. So for example, your fact may have been that as a child, your father left the family. Your interpretation of that fact might have been that it was because of you, that you were bad or wrong or should have done something or not done something, and you took his leaving to mean that it was about you. Your fact may have been that you had a certain career goal in mind that other people said was beneath you, or maybe that boys or girls can't or shouldn't do or be that. Your interpretation of that fact may have been, well, my ideas are stupid, or I really need to ask other people before I make decisions because I can't be trusted to make them on my own. Or you may have even thought, well, who am I to have a dream in the first place? And those false stories that we tell ourselves work in by what all accounts might be considered a positive situation. So I have a friend who said she had a wonderful childhood. She loved every minute about it. She was told how smart she was and how resourceful she was. She was a good kid. She ate her vegetables. She played well with others. Nothing but positive input. Those were her facts. Her interpretation of those facts, however, was that because of all those accolades, she had no room for error. If she messed up, people would see that she really didn't have it all together and that she was a failure. But once we can clearly see the difference between the facts of what happened in our lives and our interpretation of the facts, we can make conscious choices guided by our higher selves about whether or not those stories are serving us any longer. Now, the willingness to look at our stories is not about spiritual bypassing or what some people might call denial or looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. It's about knowing that we have the power to reframe our stories. So I have 5 steps to help you do just that today, to look at our old stories, determine which ones are still serving us, and we'll keep those, but for the other ones that are not still serving us, to reframe them, to chart a new conscious path for the future. So here we go. Step number 1, stop and take a deep breath. Stop and take a deep breath. Let's all do that together from wherever you are. When you do that, you sit or stand a little straighter, a little taller. Your shoulders go back a little bit. It allows just a little bit of space for perhaps something else to come in. Step number 2, thank that old story for getting your attention. Thank the old story for getting your attention. No matter what it is, it's trying to tell you something. Step number 3, examine the old story. Examine that old story. Is that story you're telling yourself absolutely true? How is it true? Why is it true? Could there be any other interpretation? Do the people who love and care for you the most believe that story too? If you're having trouble answering these questions, more than likely it's that inner critic sitting on your shoulder that's doing the talking. Step number 4, reframe the old story. Reframe the old story. You can ask yourself things like, what is the opposite of this old story? Or how do I want to feel without the burden of this story? Or even, what if I choose not to believe this story this time? And step number 5, be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. You're changing negative patterns of thought that have been deeply rooted in your subconscious mind, sometimes for years, and it takes time. Beating yourself up for still having that old story and those old thoughts is like going to the gym one time and expecting, ta-da, your body to look exactly the way you want it to. But it doesn't work that way. We're just putting one story in that forgiveness centrifuge at a time, spinning it around and separating the facts from our interpretation of the facts. So I have a new arm. I call it my new bionic arm. And there are a bunch of pins where they put them in to stabilize the bones. And then there's a plate that holds it all together. So what I say now about those cracks in my arm, my old childhood stories, is this. I am capable and smart. I am adventuresome and like to try new things. My vulnerability is one of my strengths. I am grateful for the blessings and the lessons in this experience. People love me for who I am, not what I can do. And at that plate holding it all together, I say, I am worthy and I love myself just the way I am. And to that cute little girl, I say, you were born a perfect expression of God. You always have been, and you always will be. Those other things were your old stories, but it's time to give them up. You just need to believe in yourself because you are far more than you know. So I've written an affirmation for us today. I'll say it once, and then from wherever you are, let's say it together. And it says this: I have the power to reframe my old stories and chart a new conscious path for the future. So let's say that together from wherever you are. I have the power to reframe my old stories and chart a new conscious path for the future. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me into your homes. Thank you for your time and attention. Really appreciate you all. So we're going to take a little time to go into meditation. So if you feel comfortable, just close your eyes and just sit up in your chair, or if you're standing, stand up a little taller. And you can just maybe roll your shoulders back a little, roll your head around. Just let your hands drop into your lap. Just relax your forehead, your eyes, relax your jaw, relax your whole face, your neck, your shoulders, your arms. Let your feet just dangle. Feel the support of the chair beneath you. And just take a big, deep inhale through your nose. And hold it at the top. And exhale out. And again, big inhale up. Hold it at the top. And audibly let it out. And let's do that 3 more times. Inhale up. And exhale out. And again, inhale up. Hold it at the top. Exhale out. And one more time, inhale up. Hold it at the top. And exhale out. So we've had a lot of words this morning, and we've had some beautiful music, and we've had a message. And now it's just time to let all of that land where it lands, to sit where it sits. And just let ourselves bathe in it, just marinate in it. And just listen to what Spirit has to offer us today. Maybe there's a nugget of something you heard someone say today or in the music, and that struck you, that resonated with you. Perhaps you hear Spirit speaking to you now in some way. We want to just let ourselves just rest in that. Just knowing that we were all divinely guided here this morning. There are no accidents. There's only divine guidance, knowing that we are always in the right place at the right time to hear and learn the things we need to learn and hear at the right place at the right time. So we just take it all in and just sit and breathe as we move into the silence. And as we slowly start to return to this time and place, we take a deep inhale in, hold it, and let it out. And 2 more times. Inhale in and hold it and exhale out. And 1 more time. Inhale in, hold it, and exhale out. We are so grateful for this time to come together in sacred spiritual community. We're grateful for each other. We're grateful to God. We're grateful for all of the tangible things in our lives. Food and clothing and shelter and transportation and a safe place to be. But we're more grateful for having our inner knowing, our spiritual principles, all of our 12 powers that guide and direct us in every way in our lives, knowing that we have the power to reframe our old stories. We have the power to create our current situation, and we have the power to create a positive future and chart a new conscious path for that future. So again, we are so grateful for this time and space, and grateful for all that we are, all that we have, all that we give, and all that we receive. And so it is. Amen. So we can all just take a deep breath, close our eyes. We know that we were divinely guided here by appointment. There was something that drew us here today, something we needed to hear, something we needed to see, something we needed to learn. And we know that Spirit is always doing its right and perfect work on our behalf at all times. Whether we see it or not, there is always a power and a force for good in the universe that has our back, that is supporting us, that is loving us, whether we have times where everything seems to be going right or seems that there are challenges around every corner. We know that Spirit is us, is within us. We can have unwavering trust, the unwavering trust of God and in God, the unwavering faith of God and in God, because we are all one. We are God in human form. And so we trust this power and this presence in the universe, and just know that it is only here for our greater good, as we are a link in the chain of consciousness that goes around the world forever and ever. And we're grateful. And together we say, and so it is.